So I know in talking to Ceara, she didn't really become a feminist until college. So we're going to go ahead and start talking a bit about college. Do you care to share what college you went to?
No, I went to Brescia University in Owensboro, Kentucky.
What was college like for you before you became a feminist?
Well, before I became a feminist, it was, I mean, I was a freshman before I became a feminist. I didn't actually become a feminist until like sophomore year, like toward the middle of sophomore year. But it was a change because I was experiencing a kind of freedom that I'd never had before. Like before college, my parents and my grandparents and everybody in my family were always around. They were always, I mean, I don't want to say they were smothering me because they weren't, but they were always around. And then I got to college and boom, all this freedom. There was nobody around except for people who didn't know me, so I was able to express myself in the way that I wanted to and not in the way that my family and everybody had come to expect of me. So freshman year was more focused on me trying to figure out my religion because that was still a thing that was weighing heavily on me at the time. So freshman year, half of sophomore year roughly was mostly me trying to figure out my religion, which I didn't really figure that out until recently either. I mean, I kind of knew what it was, but I didn't have a word for it then. So pre-feminism was all religion, and then feminism happened.
Okay, so what started you on the path of feminism?
Lacey Green. I came. I know what. No, but I came across her videos, and she kind of sucked me in, and I think I know why. I think she sucked me in because everything that I had been told was wrong my entire life because of, you know, the religion of people around me. Everything that I was being told was wrong by them, Lacey was telling me was okay. I was allowed to like women. I was allowed to not have a religion. You know, all that stuff was allowed in feminism, and it wasn't allowed in religion. So I think essentially religion pushed me into feminism because feminism seemed like almost a breath of fresh air because I wasn't being judged in the same way that I was whenever I was surrounded by religious people. So the two things in my life that were giving me the most problems, my sexuality and religion, they were completely null and void basically with feminism because they didn't care. And I think that's why I stuck with it for so long, because it kind of liberated me from one thing, but then it kind of subjugated me in another way, but I didn't figure that out until very recently.
Okay, and how were you introduced to Lacey Green? Was it just a random view on the internet, or was it a suggestion from a friend?
You know what? I don't remember. I don't remember if I was just surfing the web and found it or if someone recommended it to me. I don't know, but I was hooked for a while. I would watch every single one of her videos as soon as they came out. I regret it now, but what can you do?
Yeah, in case anyone's wondering, we will talk about, you know, her reaction to Lacey Green now, but for what her thoughts on Lacey Green are as of this moment, but that will come later in the video. So, okay, so we've talked about that you're pansexual, that you became pansexual after listening to Lacey Green. What comfort did you gain learning that you're a pansexual?
It just made me feel better knowing that there was a word for what I was feeling, that it wasn't just some thing, some nameless entity, and it was just liberating, I guess. And I think that's another reason why I had such a hard time letting Lacey go, because I kept denying for a really long time that Lacey was one of the bad ones. I was just thinking, no, Lacey, she's not like them. And I think that's the reason, because she in a way pulled me out of the oppression that I was feeling with religion. So it was all liberating at first. Feminism was liberating at first, and she was liberating. And that was basically the feeling that Lacey Green always made me feel, was liberation.
So was it just Lacey Green who indoctrinated you to feminism, or were there other elements?
There were other elements, because there were false statistics being thrown around in my college as well. You know, there were women's studies courses. There was even bogus statistics being thrown around in my psychology classes, and the one place I thought I was safe from that. But and there was other online feminists, of course. I didn't really listen to any of them as much as I did Lacey, though. I didn't even listen to Anita Sarkeesian as much as I listened to Lacey Green. And that's probably because I was never as bad as some of the feminists I see. I was never like hardcore, crazy, man-hating, dick-chopping, you know, rug-munching, crazy person. I wasn't. I didn't go that far. But yeah, I listened to Anita Sarkeesian a bit, and I'm pretty sure I read some of Jessica Valenti's articles as well, which I really regret now. Oh my goodness. But it was mostly Lacey Green.
So you mentioned some of the statistics. I would like to kind of get your opinion of those statistics as a feminist and what your thoughts on them were, like the 1 in 6 women will be raped.
I believed it. I don't know why I did now, but I did. Probably, well, actually, I think I do know. Before, when I was still a feminist, I hadn't taken a class in research, and then I did, and I think that probably opened my eyes a little bit to how research is done, how proper research is done. And that was when those statistics started becoming a little bit suspicious to me. But before I took that research class, I thought a statistic had to be true, because it had to be well researched for it to be published. I didn't think that, you know, a publication would publish something that wasn't true if it was a statistic. I know that was a really naive thing to think, but that's how I was back then.
Do you think that a lot of feminists are like that they hear something so it has to be true?
Maybe. I would also say that if something supports what they believe, they're going to believe it more quickly than if it doesn't. And that was probably something else that kept me believing the statistics, because Lacey Green was spouting off all these statistics at the same time I was hearing them in class, and I trusted Lacey. I really did. I trusted her a lot. So I didn't think she'd lie. And she might not be lying. She might believe it herself, but I don't know. It's easier to believe something that follows your ideology than to question what you believe and come up with a different answer.
Yeah, in the chat room now they're talking about the attractiveness of Lacey Green and her boobs. Did you find Lacey Green attractive?
Yeah, I think she's pretty. I don't know if I'd have sex with her, but I think she's pretty. And yes, she has very nice boobs. I will give her that. I don't find her as attractive anymore because of my differing opinion. I'm one of those people where your gender and your appearance and all that stuff doesn't really matter to me. It's your personality that matters. If you're a horrible person, I'm not going to want to have sex with you.
And that's really where pansexuality comes from, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And by the way, you have very nice boobs, from what I've seen.
Thank you.
I've seen them.
I don't see how.
In my mind. All right. So, was there any pressure in college from other feminists to be feminists? Or were you just kind of in a vulnerable state with your childhood growing up, questioning your religion and your sexuality? I mean, you mentioned about Lacey Green and all of that, but was there like another form of pressure at you at the same time, or was it just like you needed feminism, so that's what just you became?
I'd say it's mostly the vulnerability thing. I did have friends who were feminists, and they still are feminists, and I try to avoid, you know, conversations about feminism so as not to lose them as friends. But they didn't really pressure me, but they kind of fed the fire. Because when I would tell them about something that Lacey Green said, they would be like, "Oh yeah, 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 that's true. Yeah, yeah, this is awesome." And so I would say it was mostly the vulnerability, though, because my friends, as much as I valued their opinions, they didn't have as big of an effect on me as my vulnerability did.
With your friends, did there ever come a point where you might have said something that they might have disagreed with, or was it kind of an echo chamber that anything that was said about feminism was always correct?
We didn't disagree much on feminism, and after I stopped being a feminist was when I stopped talking to them about feminism. But most of our disagreements came from politics, because one of my friends was heavily, well, I don't want to say heavily conservative. She voted for Mitt Romney, and that's when I was like, "You're gotta be kidding me." But she was leaning more toward conservative than liberal, and we would have disagreements on politics. But yeah, I'd say in the feminism aspect, it was mostly an echo chamber.
Okay, so what would you say changed about yourself when you became a feminist? Who were you as a person?
I was I was judgmental. I was very, very, very judgmental. I was I would jump to conclusions, which I would never do now. Anytime there was a woman who said she was raped, I instantly believed her, regardless of whether she'd given any evidence or not. I would put men down for things that they had nothing to do with, because feminism had convinced me that this is men's fault, this isn't women's fault, this is the fault of men. So I would blame men for everything. And I was if I talked to myself back then, now, I would probably think I was horribly insufferable. Not as bad as other feminists, but I would still think I was insufferable.
Now, you mentioned that as much as you were against men, that you were never like the, as you said, dick chomping, which, you know, I kind of cried into a little ball when you said that earlier. What really stopped you from being like full social justice warrior, being, you know, all the way to just hating men and only liking women?
Gonna sound cliche, but I'm gonna say it was probably my husband and my guy friends, because every time a feminist would say something like all men do this and all men do that, I would just look at my husband and my friends and be like, well, she's wrong. And I could never bring myself to 100% hate men, because I knew that there were good men. And I don't think a lot of feminists acknowledge that, maybe because they've never met a nice man, or they're lonely and they've never had a boyfriend. I don't know. But I think if a lot of these feminists met good men before the other feminists got their claws into them and convinced them that all men are evil, that they wouldn't become full-blown man haters either.
And as a feminist, what was a good man to you?
Oh, I don't even know. I mean, I guess I've never actually thought about that question before. Well, my entire life, my idea of a good man or a good person is just someone who doesn't treat other people badly and does what they can to help other people. So as long as they weren't, you know, straight up mean to me, they weren't abusing me, they weren't, you know, acting like total douchebags, I thought they were nice guys. Or as long as they weren't hurting other people, you know, that there was guys who would bully my friends in college, and I thought they were terrible because they were bullies. But I never thought that of all men.
As your time as a feminist, did you ever meet male feminists, and what were your thoughts on them?
I actually never met a male feminist while I was a feminist, unless you want to count online, of course. But the ones that I met online, I kind of ignored for the most part, because feminists had convinced me that men shouldn't have a conversation, or shouldn't be in on the conversation of feminism. So I just kind of ignored what they said, like, oh, well, they're not women, they don't understand, which that was horribly bigoted of me, but that's the truth.
Okay, and I'm sure you came up on this conversation a lot about the patriarchy. What was your opinion on that?
That whole idea always kind of was fishy to me. I didn't understand the idea that men were coming together to create this oppressive force that was trying to shove women down. Even when I was a feminist, I thought that was a little weird, and I always thought maybe it was just because women were afraid, and they had to put a name on what they were afraid of, so they chose patriarchy as kind of like a scapegoat. But I don't think I ever believed that there was a patriarchy. I mean, I might have at some point, but, you know, I've tried to suppress as much of those memories as possible.
Well, this must be triggering. I'm oppressing you as we speak.
Ah, pepper spray!
Ah! You're referring to that one video I showed you?
Yes, indeed.
I showed her a funny video of basically like a nice guy going up to a girl in a bar and trying to like hit on her, and she's like, "Oh, you're so creepy," and then a really handsome guy comes up who is actually very creepy, and she just falls in love with him. It's a funny video. Okay, so the Bible says, I hope I'm saying that right, they are saying that they're really enjoying the insights into feminist thoughts. So just a
Yay!
message. Actually, it's interesting that you talk about the patriarchy, because I was recently listening to Erin Pizzi. Do you know who that is?
I don't know. It doesn't sound familiar.
You should definitely look her up. She was one of the first people to start up a women's shelter in the UK. And you know, she was very unpopular with feminists because she also wanted to start up a men's shelter, and she was basically forced out of Europe. She has a very good video with the Judgy Bitch, if you are familiar with her at all. But, you know, something she said about patriarchy is that, you know, it was developed as a way of getting money, that they just needed to pick something to hate that everyone could rally behind, and that was more of a marketing scheme versus an actual entity.
Yeah, that sounds pretty legit. Sounds better than what I thought, anyway. But yeah, I mean, in either case, in that case or in the case that I said, they're picking something, you know, to go against, whether they just needed to put a name to whatever was making them scared, or if they just needed to pick something to attack. I mean, either way, the patriarchy just seems like this made-up thing regardless.
Okay, and as a feminist, what did you think of like the anti-feminist movement and the men's rights movement?
I thought they were misguided fools. I thought that they just hadn't had their eyes open yet, and oh, those words are poison in my mouth, because that is what Christians always thought of me whenever they would hear about all of the anti-Christian quote-unquote things that they thought I was doing. They'd just be like, "Oh, you're just lost. You just don't understand what's going on." And I thought that exact same patronizing thing of anti-feminists, MRAs, you know, all of these obviously logical people. I thought that of them, and it makes me sick to think of that now.
So in a way, you became the thing that you hated?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's terrible to think about, because after I stopped being a feminist, I started looking at the parallels between feminism and religion, and I just thought, oh my God, how was I ever a part of something like this? Something that is so similar to what destroyed my childhood. How did I do this? But it just shows you how easily these feminists can get their claws in women and just drag them down to their level.
before we really move on to after feminism, there was a question in the chat by JT Vega. He wanted me to ask you about Jane Fonda. I guess what your opinion of her was. Apparently she was a feminist.
I never really heard anything about Jane Fonda. I mean, I saw her in a movie once. It was a terrible movie with Lindsay Lohan. I don't know much about her. Sorry, I can't really answer that.
All right, so that ends our segment on the feminism side. Wow, I'm moving through these fast. Usually I'm like an hour already into the video.
Well, I talk fast. That helps. Anyway.
Well, and then I guess the other people I had, they like to talk a lot. Not that I don't mind, you know, I do enjoy hearing people, but now this is going great. So this ends the feminism segment. Let's give a pause of silence so I can cut this in the video.